فَمَاذَا بَعْدَ الْحَقِّ الضَّلَالِ فَأَنَّى تُصْرَفُونَ. Nothing remains after that which is of the haqq except misguidance.
Look at to the refutations of all the enemies of Islam, of what they accused the Prophet ﷺ of, whether it be from the Yahud, the Nasara, the pagans, the polytheists, whoever hated Islam. This type of accusation was never used from none of them until almost 1,000 years later. Why? Because everybody was doing it. It was a known practice, or it was something that wasn't looked down upon. And it was known amongst that which is the non-Muslims at that time that it was acceptable in the society. Nobody looked down upon it. It was something that was known. Everybody was doing it. The Jews, the Persians, the Christians, the pagans, the fire worshippers, everyone. Everyone was doing it because it was a known practice back then. It was something in the society at the time that was what? Common. It was known. Rather, it was something that was what? Honorable for a man who was of a high status to marry his daughter off young, to take my daughter in what? In marriage. Of an honorable noble man to take my daughter in what? And offer in marriage to someone that was what? Known and having status, or one that was high or acceptable in the society, or having status in the society. It was something that was what? A practice that was acceptable, which everyone was doing it. You understand? So that's what we want to talk about and inaugurate by saying. Now, firstly, we cannot say, like this issue, we can't look at it from a Eurocentric or Western point of view. Modern Western liberalism is no more than what? 100 years old. To do so would be say that other civilizations before them are inferior, which is the peak of arrogance. European history itself shows that there have been wide variations in the age of consent. We'll start from Europe, but then we're going to move to America. Because we're going to talk about their laws and what their laws previously used to be. As a recent. It wasn't something that was all just 200 years ago. Something that was in this modern day 19th century, or that was in the 19th century. We'll talk about it. European history itself shows there have been wide variations in the age of consent. Now, before I deal in this information, we're not telling everyone to go out and break the law. You understand, everyone? Or break the laws of the land. I want to make that clear if the FBI or anybody's listening. So what I'm saying is, we're not telling anyone to go out and break the laws of the land and to put themselves and subject themselves to where they will be what? Put in jail due to this. As the ulama clearly mentioned that, and they say this, if there's something that's going to cause a harm upon yourself, don't do it. Understand, everyone? Of that which is marrying a sister or a girl that's under, or in their laws, underage. You understand, everyone? Do not put yourself and subject yourself to what? Being put under the harms of the authorities to go out and come and what? Break the law. But at the same time, don't accuse our Prophet ﷺ as something that was what? Known and practiced in the whole society, whether it be from the Jews, the Christians, and everyone. This wasn't something that was weird until modern day liberalism came along, which is no older than a butt, about maybe 100 years old. Right, everyone? Right. So traditionally across the globe, the age of consent for sexual union was a matter for the family to decide, or a tribal custom. In most cases, this coincided with signs of puberty, just like our brother just mentioned, menstruation for a woman and pubic hair for a man. So for a woman that could have been as young as 9 or 10, a clear physical sign in a woman that she's ready for sexual relations, that she's what? She starts her mens, which proves that she can what? Bear children. Right, everyone? Play it. In the 12th century, Gratian, the influential founder of canon law in medieval Europe, so we're talking about Europe now, accepted age of puberty for marriage to be between 12 and 14. 12 and 14. Acknowledged consent to be meaningful if the children were older than 7. There were authorities that said that consent could take place earlier. Marriage will what? Marriage would then be valid as long as neither of the two parties annulled the marital agreement before reaching puberty, or if they had already consummated the marriage. It should be noted that judges honor marriages based on mutual consent at ages younger than 7. That's in Europe, the non-Muslims. In spite of that which Gratian has said, in spite of what he said, there are recorded marriages of 2 and 3 years old. That's in Europe. And that was 500 years after Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So that proves marriage was common throughout what? Europe to children younger than what? Aisha. You understand, everyone? one. Now let's move to America, over here. The American colonies followed in the English tradition, and the law was more of a guide. For example, Mary Hathaway, Virginia, 1689, was only 9 when she married to William Sir Edward Coke. England, 17th century, made it clear that marriage of girls under 12 was normal. And that age at which a girl who was a wife was eligible for a dower from her husband's estate was 9, even though her husband be only 4 years old. 17th century. That is 1,000 years after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It would be upon now for the non-Muslims to say that your grandfathers, your ancestors, their grandfathers, your ancestors, your forefathers were all what? Pedophiles. And they're not willing to say that. Based upon your ideologies of that, which is a modern day liberalism, that necessitates that your grandfather, your forefathers, your grandfathers, everybody else, everyone in the whole civilization of the earth were all pedophiles. Everyone. Because the Romans were doing it, the Persians were doing it, the pagans were doing it, the fire worshippers were doing it. Everybody was doing it. Why? Because it was known as something that was what? Acceptable in the society. Everybody was doing it. It was something that was not looked down upon. It was something that was known in the society that everyone was doing it. That's the reason why you never see none of the enemies of Islam. They called the Prophet ﷺ a magician. They called him crazy. They called him to the end of the most dispraiseworthy thing they could say, except that which is of being a fornicator. They can never say that about him because he was always a purified man, alayhi salatu wasalam. But other than that, which was of those magicians being a liar and then to the end of it, but they never used this against him, ever. Because they were what? Everybody was doing it. So they can never say this about him, and it was never used against him until 1,000 years later, until modern day liberalism came about. And then the laws changed. So that's what we say. That's a refutation against them. To say, we're not telling people to go against the law. We're not saying to go out for our people to go out in the masjid, go break the law. But at the same time, don't accuse our Prophet ﷺ, alayhi salatu wasalam, of something which was known in the society amongst the civilization, the whole earth, as something that was acceptable and not looked down upon. But that which is the summarized version, I wanted to give that. So that's what you say to a non-Muslim if he was to ask you that. Based upon, the Prophet, your Prophet Muhammad married a girl. Why would he marry a little girl of 9 years old?